Incredible. Usually my audio picks up a lot, so it might echo like this.
Okay, I'm good now.
So you're not trying to unmute it.
Both of you need your audio.
Yeah, my audio.
My audio's on. Is this an atrocious? Is this an atrocious echo, Al? Is it okay?
And you can hear me fine too.
Okay. Well, I hear you were muted on both of our computers, but.
We're gonna presume you're good. We good? Okay, awesome. We'll start crossing.
Okay. Oops. Okay. Use consequentialism. What is the consequence of reading the 1AC?
We think the 1AC has been a good political advocacy. We think the consequences of not debating the 1AC mean that we are not climate literate, or
we
also think we do not have the climate literacy stuff, which is the 2 cards above that. We also just think that just like reading about and talking about why corn is
what kind of climate literacy does the 1AC promote?
Yeah, the 1AC highlights the ways that farming and the status quo is unsustainable for a large amount of populations, how it also has racial impacts and hurts pollution, kills people, causes people to be hungry and thirsty, which is bad.
Okay. So those are all climate literacy things about the harms of the 1AC. I am asking a question about the climate literacy of the solvency.
Yeah, so we think the debating of the 1AC creates climate literacy about the harms of the solvency, but the boring squatter evidence is also really good on the question about having debates about the climate and about hypothetical government action will lead people to change the ways that they live their lives to be more sustainable.
To be more sustainable.
Yeah, it says that fear about the climate will lead to action about the climate, and says that a large portion of the problem with climate change is people living unsustainably.
Will lead to action.
Yeah, like fear of climate disaster.
Okay, what kind of action?
The Borgers-Water evidence uses shifting from cars to public transit as an example.
An example would be to stop buying corn ethanol.
Or stop buying corn ethanol. Or stop farming corn sustainably.
People will stop farming corn after they read the 1AC. That is an interesting claim. Which evidence is this? Hang on. I thought it was this one. Okay, normatively, yes, that's fine. You have a line in the 1AC about climate activist groups. What is the relation here? It is crucial to comprehend how activist networks affect public climate literacy. How is that?
People have advocated for the plan to be passed, specifically indigenous groups and black farmers who have been pushed out of the market.
What is the relationship between the 1AC and climate activism?
Well, we think the 1AC is a statement that affirms their activism.
Affirms activism? What kind of activism?
Well, as I just said, black farmers who are pushed out of the market and also indigenous groups who are A, pushed out of the market, and B, dispossessing their land have asked for the plan to be passed, have asked for the
No, I'm asking about specific climate activism.
I'm confused with that question, because I answered.
I don't know, because there are activist networks, and you just said individual people want the plan to be passed, but that is not
those are large groups, not individual.
What groups?
The Indigenous Environmental Network.
The IEN wants the plan to be passed. Okay.
Correct.
And
also, we made a broader claim about black farmers who have been pushed out of the market. There's obviously not a black farmers coalition or anything, but we think that those people collectively have asked for the plan to be passed because they're pushed out of the market.
I'll keep your mail right. Perfect. I love.
you should unmute your computer such that you can come watch the video.
Awesome. So it just got sent. The order is 1 in that case.
We do have a recording going, and if you sit on the side of it, you're in the recording.
Okay.
No, you're fine to be in the recording.
Situate yourself wherever y'all like. We're gonna stand. Stand as far as y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yep, perfect.
Oh, I'm
I'm gonna put my audio up real quick so I can hear you now.
I was asking if there was any order I should flip case or if we're thinking it's a straight down situation.
Oh, it's probably a straight down
Yeah.
situation.
yeah.
Okay, give me just a hot second. I'm good now.
Alright, perfect. If I leave my audio on, will that cause problems for
No,
me?
you're good.
At the height of 1960s climate activism, the term just transition was coined by the labor activist Tony Zoji. In 2002, Tony died in the midst of a slow, difficult journey at a party that expressed the need for political action. In 2007, Thomas Freeman, economist for the NYT, paused his cause upon American children and called for a green transition, described as a Jewish strategic geoeconomic capitalism patriotic. He envisioned a world where living, working, designing, manufacturing, and projecting America in a green way can be the basis of a new unified political movement for the 21st century. In 2009, the Obama administration sent Todd Stern to Copenhagen for a climate summit where he told the press that we absolutely recognize our historic role of putting emissions into the atmosphere. Here, the Amazon president vowed intimacies of racial settler capitalism are denied as they're invoked. They linger, ghost like acknowledging climate death, but aligning the Jews that stolen life and futures cannot be redistributed, cannot be repaid. Meanwhile, universities poured money into research about how adapting climate change requires hard decisions AI can make. Upon Biden's re-election in 2020, Bill McKibben, a climate activist, declared that there now seems a real possibility of concerted action across our government to make sweeping change. 4 years later, in 2024, Kamala Harris gradually announced that we've invested $1 trillion in clean energy in the next breath. She was a tie-breaking vote in the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. McKibben's words were hollow. Is this what sweeping change looks like? Combined empathy of social democracy and imperial war making by the means are employed as an institutional resource to govern dissidents. 2024. This has been a revival works as currency and social institutional life, got the exhaustion, flow that set institutions such as schools, courts, and government, that church and lives of Chicago, political team, steward, state power, to expand the legitimate balance, quotidian, internet, and intimate ways, terror, digital, a multitude of small ones, conducted in normative social spaces, is social currency producing relational economy, and neoliberal governmentality, marginalizing basic different rights, indisputable economy, balance is an institutional resource for the state and middle government based on forms of social difference, and this shapes every day, forms of connecting tissue between these processes and actors, and establishes it immanentized between them. Violent entities approach trends as a site of condensed racial economy of violence, and through it, social difference is produced and managed formative for relations, race, migrants, segregation, surveillance, securitization, political economy, disability, indigeneity, violent entities, offers new perspectives of studies, state power, securitization, and surveillance, family, and intimacy. The trans every day is a site of potentiality, world making both violent and extraordinary and ordinary, oppressive and productive. This is a transnational study series that aims to transgress the ongoing agenda Eurocentric accounts in trans studies. This makes us rethink the notion of violence and intimacy and the relationship between them in the entangled world of the trans everyday. One currency is violence and the other is intimacy. Trans people's bodies and trans spaces of inhabitation and socialization are in violent ways avoidable. Violent intimacies as a means to understand the concurrent in violence and intimacy exposes the connective tissue of a system of normative social order intertwined with neoliberal governmentality by and political order and authoritarian management of social difference. Their reformist frame is politically palatable and the government together promises to change everything without changing anything at all. Consensus doesn't have to be manufactured on pro-union climate policies included by Clinton, which uses the government purse to guarantee jobs in the transition to a green economy. This reveals that what's at stake in climate conversation is the attachment to the good or secured by U.S. imperialism, racial capitalist exploitation, the injustice and brutality of this world is built from the bottom up. A moral economy that threatens against the structures of power uses the fabric of modernity as terror as usual because counterintuitively operates at the level of our most intimate wishes and desires. Moment for 24. Bush authorized African focus and current in way to U.S. competitors on Africa's oil expanding repression against the Earth's Liberation Front, trade from counterterrorism to humanitarian security, on the way quote how African begins the meeting building to the United States to ensure access to resources. This modification reflects as the green capitalist conflict, murders and militarized accumulation, shredded in turn towards green energy and build mechanisms to ensure control over untapped markets and peace, transitional capitalist investments from oil to land and beyond. The turn towards battlefield production side, flood of investment and still the new dimension, green capitalist counter-revolution to ensure continued access to the undone truth through the end circles of labor over rebellions and manufactured instability and perpetual imperialist war upon accumulation becomes growing in the new imperial scramble for African resources, giving a platform for militarized accumulation to expand the security apparatus that improves like MEND that were successful, we disrupting fossil capital acceleration and the entanglements of war between the human front and not yet human that is predetermined by erasure of others, paradigmatic of disposition of social values, fundamental techniques and crucial to stem militarized accumulation places like Nigeria, like disposabilities and not yet human, whose very existence becomes an immediate impending growth, new imperialist dispossession strategies render entire population expendable, the emphasis necessitates deep exploitation, disposability, militarized accumulation, creates conditions for self-determination that can only be amended through intervention and violence. But violent emphases are not confined to those times and reforms overnight. After all, Harris is wrong about trillions of dollars invested in clean energy. McKibben's hope predicted by the Inflation Reduction Act and AOC's Green New Deal shifted the needle for congressional discussion on climate. Sovereignty does grant us reforms, and in the time it takes to win the struggle, it slowly and insidiously kills us. And when that reform finally comes, it's too little, too late, and and never really what we wanted in the first place. In the meantime, power infiltrates us at the level of the everyday. It is through this process of grand reform that mainstream activism and political imagination remains wedded to systems that are an obstacle to fortune. This cruel optimism is perpetuated through magnifying vitality within the same power structure that produced climate devastation in the status quo. 023. It's a phenomenon that likes more creative approach to optimism that just represented part of the solving ecological crisis, the affective relation where some desires and absolute absorption for optimism is maintained by fantastical faith in a solution that counteracts the problem to affirm radical of getting those who live in the end of time towards the new multicultural social interactions from alarms and to understanding the entangled shared of women dying and conjured right commodities from the right and left conjured by future. That goes to the return to sustaining the structure, sustaining the Anthropocene science, offers no more original stance and no political or projectual tech remains what is the status quo, the green spirit of green capitalism that's core deep within the reserve here, the narrative between Bill Gates and Bill McKibben, Joe Cherry solution is also reinforce the unjust, unsustainable ordinary politics of the delusional fantasy that make hard to come to terms with climate emergency. Your name for the smooth function of mainstream activism keeps the Anthropocene firmly placed as a cultivation of false hopes. Tony Mazzocchi spent his whole life struggling to build a political momentum on climate change and died in 2002. Maybe his legacy was Bill McKibben and the IRA and AOC's Green New Deal. The affirmative has extended an invitation. They've taught us to invest our lives fighting for repeal of subsidies, but we know in that time we too will die. But of resources, it is through the intimate investment in a social democracy that hope rolls like tear gas into the undercommons. Their ban on fuel subsidies is a performative environmentalism that alchemizes demands for radical environmental reform into liberal narrative progress that reproduce hierarchical social order and forecloses the possibility of radical transformation. Anderson 22. Performative environmentalism enables the collective produces ecological legitimacy while denying that this reproduces social inequality along class lines. These performance and marginalized voices does most effective intensify silence, discourage collective action, green practices provide sense of progress while reproducing hierarchical social order. This creates a field against space to deflect critical attention from broader economic system, downplay structural change to critique and question this is significant against mainstream moderate Western environmentalism, inflect commodifying ecology, affects the neoliberal Monterey environmental movements, bring consumption subsidies to trade from system critique to radical challenges to the political order. On the Marxist cardiac political order. Prejudice realism becomes fire hose of death and Spain of revolutionary hopes. Question realism should be dismissed as ideological counterinsurgency against us. We're not merely hope for, but need a better world. And facing the entanglements between violence and agency, vote negative refusal is a seductive invitation to reformism. This refusal opens the door for a new kind of entanglement on sight of incandescent beauty that imagines and manifests a world otherwise possessed on going forward. Power resistance struggle, the everyday involves the formation of affinities through violence, transmutation, is created substance, kill, or create fine political organization, the community-based event, and the scope of the violence, creates themselves the political actors, trends that everyday unfolds through performance, where entities manifest and mediate between people's welfare, joy, laughter, as well as tears, the sides of intimacy, great incandescent beauty, which make people match as well as act on affective collective form of social transformation, folds itself into the event, folds itself into the ordinary term, the everyday, into the eventful, into the fluid, portable, flexible, complex, and difficult, containing, integrative formation, attention to the body, proximity, scrutiny, and intimacy, and tangle relation, power, violence, and necessarily individual subjectivation, rather than intimacy can be creative man in the form as harmony demonstrates intimacy can be a future possibility, refusal, assimilation of the warfare, helping the survival, change, revolutionary modern peace. All is to refuse to give Sylvia Rivera up for the ballot box, not for the politics of UN recognition that breaks the cycle of consensus and reformism that the one is he pushes the radical option of the surge of decolonial environmental movements in and outside the imperial court. Marker 24. When they're awakening the climate rise and desire to strip the impact, climate is based on undoing the power of fossil fuel industry, easily usurped by the institutional force beyond alternative fuel, intensify the extractivism and that decimates indigenous communities and condemn millions to suffering the affect of counter-revolutionary responses against the radical ecological movements historically revolutionary deserving breaks cycle reformism and rigidly either or fatalism before climate activism. On the case. It's due to agricultural production that already consolidated around landowners and after itself while causing like a need to redistribute farm income. Douglas 24. Farms in the U.S. continue to go out in the number of farms sold between 2017 and 2022 releases by the U.S. Department of Ag showed on Tuesday there were 1.9 million farms in the 2022 and down by 7% from 2.04 million in 2017. Those 67 invested in support false farmers operations and better distribute farm income, which this country among the largest farm U.S. farms have already been a steady decline for several decades between 1997 and 2017. The number fell by 8%. The vast majority of farms are owned and ran by white producers. And Canada fills the production of biofuels. They just invested $1.27 billion towards new facilities back 24. Canada's biofuel industry will continue multi-billion package of financial support from the federal government. The government is committed $1.27 billion to building new fossil fuel facilities from Canada infrastructure banks, but the federal budget also included disbursement of the top $500 million annually towards supporting biofuel production.
The U.S. government circumvents. They will do everything in their power to stop
Our power.
Yeah,
U.S. government circumvents.
just say it. Just say the U.S. government circumvents. They will do everything in their power to increase subsidies for other things to fill in, and also to stop the plan from being passed.
They'll do everything they can to stop subsidies from being passed. Cool. In the back card, I got you production.
I think you need to turn your volume on so I can unmute. So
True.
Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Awesome. The alternative is a conditional.
Unconditional.
It's unconditional. You'll go for it. Okay. I want to ask about it. The text of the alternative says it is to refuse to give up Sylvia Rivera for the ballot box, Fanon for the politics of UN recognition. Who is given up for the app?
That is I don't, well, first of all, the card above is the defense of the alternative.
Okay,
The next
but
one is
I guess the
the
question still stands,
policy.
who is given up for the passage of the app?
Our
Well-
argument is that reformism always requires the expense of some to provide
Who?
reform.
The expense of who?
That is always a extractionary process.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a good thesis level claim. Who is the app at the expense of?
Well, examples like, you were like, well, the 1AC incorporates ecological movements like the IEN. Our argument is that you turn them towards reformism. You give up
Okay,
the
so the
radicalism
IEN has
of these
specifically
movements.
asked for the app, and it gives up radicalism by acceding to their demands.
Huh?
The IEN has specifically asked for the app, and it
We
gives
think,
up their
we
radicalism
think
to
that
accede to their demands.
reformism should be understood as like a fire hose that douses the flames of insurgency. That was the argument above.
Okay,
Like,
do you
yes,
think the
correct.
alt solves the
Reformism is
app?
always bad.
The environment.
The
I
environment of the app.
I don't think that we would ever want to result in an elimination of fossil fuel subsidies because we have made an argument,
Well, that's not fossil subsidy.
Yeah, that's not the apples, but.
or whatever it is, corn subsidies. We think that reformism is always counterinsurgency and should be rejected in
But
every instance.
How does it solve the environment? Like, how does it solve
Well,
climate change?
first, it's an alternative to debate over the plan. You have said in 1AC Cross-X that the consequence of the 1AC
Okay, like-
is political advocacy and climate literacy. We think that that political advocacy and climate literacy of reformism is bad.
You said reform is bad, but what should we endorse instead?
I mean,
Insurgency.
this is the alternative. It's a
What does
trend
insurgency
that
look
it's
like?
a
and how does
radical intimacies we form with each other. It's a discourse that does not force itself into the tear gas of revolutionary hope in the different
it?
colonies.
Okay,
This is
how does the
our
app result in the tear gas of revolutionary hope? How does the app spill over to other forms of revolutionary
hope
hope?
is the tear gas that rolls into the undercomes. Our argument is about the investments made.
Okay,
in
so
the
like,
invitation
I guess I'm
to
gonna ask
the
about like the thesis of the K, right?
Sure.
So like the app is abolitionism in the instance
Oh,
of corn
hang on.
subsidies. So
The
how
app
does
is-
that how does that spill over to other forms of radicalism?
This is a new link, and you should flow it as one. This is how they co-opt the abolitionism, which is a term from the black radical tradition that refers to the elimination of a society that could have carcerality, and they turn it into, we abolish corn subsidies. Be fucking for real. That's our argument.
How is that?
That's a new link. So you should float as one. And you
I-
should answer it in the 2AC. I hope you do.
The case cards about Canada filling in, we've only read impacts about United States subsidies. What implications does this have for the app?
The implication is you just conceded the argument about reformism giving up radical demands. You just conceded.
That is a
You
different
were like,
question than you just
well,
answered.
Canada argument, you can't solve for fucking Canada. I don't know what we're talking about.
Okay. Sending it out. Okay. The 2AC has been sent. It's case in the critique.
I left my copy in my teammate's room. I'm just gonna go see if I can go grab it really quick. It's like across the hall.
My question is which or both of y'all are farm voters?
I think I'm probably more of a farm boy than you.
My grandparents were, but it ended with my parents.
Your family?
My family doesn't farm, but like we were from a community that is more rural than not.
Damn, I'm the only one repping the family farm then. What the fuck are we talking about?
Sorry, should have
Vote
won
next for fucking embodied praxis, guys.
Alright. I'm like,
Cool. Good to sound.
Al, you get the doc. We can't hear you, but thumbs up.
You can unmute since you're the only one with audio on.
Okay. Sorry. Al, what did you just say? I'm now out audio.
Can you hear me now?
I can now hear you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the done. We're
Okay.
good to go.
Iowa did. Okay. Vote app to eat corn instead of burning it. The government is propping up food-based ethanol production through subsidies and fuel mandates where the plan ends, immediately deleting the ethanol market that outweighs one, hunger. Artificially profitable ethanol crowds out production of edible crops, increases global food prices, and forces farmers into fertilizer-intensive growth, which harms soil quality. 23 million people are facing preventable starvation because of the global rain shortfalls and cause by Russia's invasion. That's immunity. Second, water. Ethanol is extremely irrigation independent or dependent, trading off the access to drinking water for millions. And the third is air quality. Ethanol refineries pollute substantial particulate matter and ground level ozone, which increases cancer. That's graffiti. Our impacts are dropped. They're also linear, so every degree of solvency matters, which disproves their ontology arguments and turns the alternative exponentially harder to do a revolution if you're starving, thirsty, and breathing toxic pollutants. Now the line by line, they say white farmers are consolidating now. This is our uniquest argument. The app makes a sizable dent in that because the only reason why some of those farms are profitable is because of subsidies, which the plan immediately ends. Don't dismiss all forms of progress just because the plan doesn't end all white farm consolidation does not mean it's not a good idea. And they have dropped every impact why corn ethanol production is bad, as you know. The plan certainly solves. Second, they say Canada fails and Ace point that says they're doing it now. It's not possibly the offense. This is also not just about corn. It's about all ethanol, which they have not said is bad. But B, the plan ends the mandate. Right now, the U.S. requires 10% of all gasoline to include 10% ethanol, which is why there's a massive demand for ethanol. Post-plan, they wouldn't even import Canadian biofuels because there's no longer the mandate for that. Well, I want to see if with circumvention we get durable fiat with guarantees good faith implementation of the plan so it can get rolled back after the valuable thought experiment to debate about whether the plan would be a good idea. Not that if it actually happened, the plan is broad and ends all food-based biofuels, so the government cannot reinterpret the plan in any other way. It must end subsidies and mandates for those fuels which guarantee solvency because we have unique impacts why food-based biofuels are bad. Critique. Framework first, compare the hypothetical implementation of the plan against the alternative. The alt must present an opportunity cost of doing the plan. Anything else puts the bar for an offense too low. One is fairness, you leave, you lose. Rigs the game and creates resource disparities, returning defense into offense, and turns any benefit into activity. Only the ballot solves disparities and intrinsic good that they equally rely on. Second, clash, comparing opportunity costs, creates arguments of refinement. Alternative shifts nexus of debate, which includes reciprocal engagement with their literature. Third, climate literacy, and the one you see in dropped. Evaluating the merits of climate activities, improve problem solving, critical thinking, and breaks down dogma. That's key to filter through misinformation and inform our politics and daily lifestyle habits. Any risk of our offense outweighs because our impacts are linear, and every degree of solvency matters and saves lives. That's powers who are studying studies about debate. Four is consequences, ignoring disads, the alt, diverse responsibility for atrocity driven by Iraq war being justified through discourse alone. That's a naughty critique without a political method to solve the links. It's form of arms throughout politics that implicitly licenses violence. They critique. That's Wagner. The alt is unconditional, which means that if we win revolution produces more violence and reform, then you should vote AF. Now with permutation, you can do both. If the alt can overcome the status quo, can overcome the links to the AF. Thirdly, because functioning the plan didn't do enough, but including the alt means it solves. The net benefit is case because they have no way to solve our impact. Also, permutation to the alt, if it rejects all state action and it results in revolution, then also must include ending subsidies for ethanol. We're not saying the plan is equal to abolitionism. We're just saying they're compatible strategies and are the plan would accelerate abolition. They say the democracy bad link. There's one ACs in line for critique democracy. Rich right farm conglomerates have lobbied the government for subsidies at the expense of marginalized farmers. The state has then engaged in misinformation and told people that corn ethanol is environmentally beneficial when it's lying. One AC interrogates that and exposes the state lies, so it solves the critique of the state. State action is compatible with radical critiques of the state. Even though French and Timeline, Career 22, advocate for change under equality, relied on policy proposals, political figures, also between sense of assistance, the recognition, the power of the state, and invincibility, huge active privileges should be priority movements. Now, both positions simultaneously, they're not incompatible in a short-term alleviate problems, though there's long-term vision difference, are not held by distinct people. Now, the reformism link, one, the plan is only reformism if they beat the case. People are starving now, and because they're burning their food, they don't think the plan is a half measure. The plan is sufficient to solve those things, so it's a valuable thing to endorse. But rejection of reform is paternalistic. Indigenous environmental activism is effective, challenges white supremacy, and creates spiritual hope. Non-natives should provide policy support which emboldens resistance. It makes abolition more effective. Goal 2021, indigenous peoples develop highly effective campaigns that blended non-violent direct action, political lobbying, multimedia, dividing against global projects, resistance of stop, unquote, no use Canadian emissions. Planners are emboldened to seek the results of research. The guard for support removes those with indigenous people to provide any policy grounded in informed consent. We church circles of they instill based on spiritual practice and deep relationship with earth. This approach exists regardless of not other nation states concepts of why opportunity for extraction is based on obligations to the land destructive actions of traditions indigenous knowledge by seeking to get onto the spiritual ways from land versus such acts to protect land. The collective power, provide pharmacy and challenges capitalism and near-strategic materialism. Those activists have explicitly called for rejection of biofuel subsidies in the plan, IEN 22. The institute's framework is the cure in the face of troubled communities to open up into biofuel development. They are the promising step in meaningful environmental justice. Once some versions versus perpetuating injustice, majority versions of false solutions like biofuels. Domestic biofuel production is set to expand. The program is given $297 million to utilize corn, the IRA gets rid of to incorporate biofuels, increase biofuels to lead to land grabs, more bone production, which increases soil erosion, chemical runoff, fossil fuel dependency. Funding provides 10% of the total cost for a project that increases the sale of ag fuels. The Terra as usual link is wrong. No link at all. The plan does not justify or cause military accumulation at all. We're just saying we should not burn our food and we should actually instead eat it. In the status quo, the U.S. is coercing global markets in Brazil and India, or Brazil and Indonesia to massively expand biofuel production to meet the corn ethanol mandate in the United States that causes violent land grabs and deforestation. Which the plan is that in that link to this, if they read the link in the block, we get a new one responses because this is not at all contextual to the 1AC. They say that act is performative. Every past reform thumbs, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, etc., all should have derailed movements. If abolition movements still exist despite past reforms, then you should not conclude that the 1AC derails all movements. The act prevents class, or the alt prevents class struggle by guiding political strategies towards ivory tower pessimism. Back in 20s, pessimism was still some little philosophers understood movements were used to failure. They had hopelessness, deadlock, where bourgeoisie is not just a working class possibility, but the fears unfeasible creatures of the practice that makes also forms of the article air treatment of culture and language parroting, intelligization, free theories, and taken up by former civic responsibility of living the struggle of attempt focus on language culture is based by limiting class free theories to be working out into the hands of bureaucrats, social justification for capitalist forces to become LGBT friendly. Free theory does not offer ideas that provides ruling class and individualizing camouflages oppression upon racism, personal experiences, and theorized race. It does not have a principle of generalized free theory reactionary to boost this class struggle and promotes the abolition of individuals. Now, the alternative, it fails. It cannot solve the global environment. Case in point is theory. Alt cannot fiat more people than planned passage for fairness. It prevents abusive mindset fiat, allowing transition offense and feasibility contestation and clash because it reciprocally centers the stasis for comparison. Case in point, it cannot solve other countries sign World 21 U.S. largest economy in history of the first world. Anything that can cause emissions could vanish or even die. Emissions will still explode over population that can both China, India, and Africa. Emissions from the 7.8 billion will rise. Second, can't solve consumption. Case in point, convincing voluntary and abrupt transition or abrupt reduction in consumption is impossible. Subsequent 24 degrowth impossible in the world. All leaders would persuade this property to remain or convince them of just permanently reducing incomes, political death to believe otherwise will be found but signing faith into national persuasion. Jesus cannot convince everyone to give up their possessions and luckily degrowth their will. B, but even if it were, it would be worse for the planet. Right, 23. Some say they must reduce the conventional what they give you. Not this master billion having your electricity available in oil, gas, and everything they get their hands on to reduce energy for energy will double the century. Energy is the overall option for replacing fossil fuels. Third is offense. The alt has zero support, causes fascist crackdowns which turn their offense and mass starvation, all without solving the warming. Wolf 23 anti-revolution. No party is not with power to only be a global dictator that unrealistic and growth did cease emissions of the fall. Only 40% would not solve the climate to achieve zero, eliminate all energy, but it would require a reversal of all welfare, devastating well-being and political stability, for additional rules and nourishment, starvation, one centuries population, institution to 10% article alternative is a dystopian solution, calling from tech that limits GHG self control. We'll never know what is in everybody's head. Markets are just incentive structure turn out a more predatory state on the way millions were killed. Must do our best with Read the Perfect Eco-Human is a delusion. The alt just gives more power to white farmers now because it has no way to cause them to lose money. People have a monopoly on the power now. Only the plan solves it by redirecting subsidies to them towards smaller farmers. Markets are improved with successful predictors, and alternative experts mismanage allocation. Look at Smart 19. Over decades, markets or whatever. One polls in elections, much better. The race experts, orange futures improve upon weather, stock prices. By Blue Collar Challenger, markets exceeded forecasting sports, movies, receipts, Oscars, global market cap, scientific research, and flew outbreaks, acknowledged markets do not function as a crystal ball, yet the fact markets does not mean there are uses that can be valuable as long as they perform well relative to other mechanisms. I got 40 seconds.
Say the abolitionism stuff is obviously not co-option. We abolish a market by getting rid of it.
Abolitionism is not a market. We do abolish in some sense because we get rid of an entire market and we link terms that catalyzes broader movements. Okay, I'm actually good. Yeah.
Okay, she read a card about queer theory that...
You might want to. You might want to.
Oh, well, that would work. Hold on.
Since you need to turn it on.
Whoops. Oh, then I'm new. Cool, good.
Yeah.
And Al, you can hear me? Finally. Cool, alright. Your Kip Kat 20 card talks about Marxism versus queer theory, talks about how reformers use queer theory and instead we should engage in more radical struggle. Why is this
incorrect?
Yeah.
It says that queer theory advocates are using reformism bad as a reason not to engage in productive solutions.
Quote, queer theory has been willingly taken up by some reformists
To evade their
responsibility of leading actual struggle. Why is this not an example of how the affirmative model is not the alternative? Like, why is this not a de-radicalization?
It says that pessimism is bad and we should believe that reforms can make improvements in the world, proven by the case.
Alright,
And
so
then we
the
should
only
not
argument here is just that the all is pessimist.
pessimistic towards reform again.
Okay, cool. Moving on from there, I guess you said at the end of the flow, all redistributed subsidies towards like poorer farmers, towards small farmers.
Like the subsidies are
Where
going
did
to
you go?
white farmers now. The
Okay,
plantation
what
subsidies.
subsidies do you have that those kids redistribute? What's in terms?
Like no, we don't increase subsidies. We just the ones that are going to black. To the
Yes,
white
but
farmers.
how do you redistribute them?
We distribute subsidies. We don't. We just
Oh.
we end subsidies.
Okay, because I heard
But we
on the
redistribute wealth and power because those subsidies are the reasons
What?
why consolidation is happening.
You hang on. We redistribute wealth and power.
Because those subsidies make monocultures artificially profitable, which allows white farms to dominate smaller people of color farms.
So farmers should have equal access to the markets. That's your argument.
We should not artificially prop up
yes,
white
farmers.
conglomerates.
Okay.
Okay, I guess like what evidence have you then read that is sufficient to like boost smaller farmers?
So we've not read like an impact or solvency claim about solving this, but we've said that like it can be offense for you because as of now, those subsidies only allow monocultures to dominate. Which is
Okay,
how they-
so like what you do for smaller farmers, like up in the air, like I'm confused what you do.
We think the plan benefits them, but we have made not read a direct impact
Okay.
of that. You conceded that 3 impacts that we have read.
No, sure. But I'm trying to like pin down. You think ending something is bad, but you will not define
Like,
it
we
as
think that
sufficient.
plan is necessary but not sufficient to reverse racism within all of agriculture.
Cool, sounds good.
Case, they said they don't import any more fuels after. Why?
You said
Because right now there's a mandate that says 10% of all gasoline must include ethanol.
Plan text does not eliminate that. That sounds extra topical as fuck. Are you gonna defend that? I'm gonna read extra topical.
You should have read T. It does say mandates. It does say that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're right. That's fine.
Cool. On to fairness, I guess like fairness, or you say ballot solve, so is ballot solve for fairness? Like,
Because it remedies the unfairness in
what
this.
does it mean to remedy unfairness?
If the debate was unfair, it should not have occurred. So the judge would overcorrect and vote for
But
this.
how does the ballot solve for that post facto then? Like I guess.
Yeah,
like,
because
are you gonna defend that changes something?
the reason why unfairness is bad, it gives you a higher chance to the ballot. So voting for us would correct that.
Cool. Then, yeah.
Everything's
Yeah, proud. Sorry, we can't hear you though.
Mindset shift is the only reason to reject, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not really an reject argument, it's just like a threshold for the all.
Okay.
414, 7. Is everybody like inside on mute? I'm
Yep.
also gonna take out our stands so we don't keep like fucking yellow stands. I always stopped at 414. It makes sense. The order is the K. I put framework on a separate page because that would be in the one front. And I'm sorry, it's the K in the case. I lied. Oh, I'm so sorry. You were muted on my computer. Would you say that one more time?
Just so you know, I kind of did the same thing you're suggesting. I have the alternative stuff on a separate sheet of paper.
Okay. Yes. Alright, now my computer's dying, so.
Basically, from framework down, I have on a separate sheet of paper.
Gotcha.
If that helps you.
Gotcha. Yeah. Tyler low-key tangled this thing. Fucked it up last night. I got it. Sorry. Was how to plug in an extension cord and everything. Anyone not ready? Okay.
Intimate economies of violence are the connective tissue of the everyday occurrence issued by social political institutions with the imposition of terror as usual, a multitude of small wars and normal social spaces that establish power to govern, manifesting a global order that is unsustainable and never political to its core. Kansas expands its moral economy through calls for us to use this debate to think about how much better the world would be if subsidies for corporate implemented, but is a sentimentality of that demand of imagination, of that demand for imagination and recognition that galvanizes a narrow scope of political action and disciplines us into an intimacy with liberalism. There are two impacts. One, counterinsurgency. This sentimentality guarantees fascism and militarism through the back door of liberalism because we feel good about the political imaginaries and might someday offer us like the one they see that sustains our unsustainable investments in the state and greenlights the extinction of some lives to hear others. Two, slow death. Attachment to a vision of the good life via reformism is a cruel optimism that keeps us affectively engaged in a mode of political engagement that kills us slowly, like Tony Versace's lifelong struggle for radical climate action materializes in empty words in the IRA. Death piles up all around us in Kansas. Watch it happen only to say, well, this will be the day those in power finally see reason, which disavows that this violence is constitutive of the world and feeds on our most intimate wishes of things or otherwise. Every time nobody heard we are making the pitch that 90% of our reformers quit before they hit it big. Remember, the one that seek trace climate reforms from grand vision of change back to 7 nations of the status quo. Zonshi's movement building collapse into virtue signaling the price of Copenhagen. Radical non-reformist reforms are hollowed out of substance by OC and Harris' skewered imperialist green grabbing. Every example proves our theory of power and flips triad negative because we've been trying, but those are the outcomes. You should be unwilling to risk so much for so little. The active debate is net negative for the environment because the 2AC has failed to articulate an internal link between the demand for the demand for an abolition of subsidies and its enactment. You presume negative because debate's obligations to orient itself towards abolition. Otherwise, we are actively participating in the eco-genocidal system. Now I'm skipping framework because that would be the one and R, but I'll go down to the permutation debate. Permutation debate here. They say that the link is not to. They say that the link is not to the plan. But all of the links are prior questions. The permutation. So I'll do the professionalization link here. The money sees investment in the demands for reformism and is the tear gas that rolls into the undercommons. Liberalism collaborates with the cops to discipline populations into proper action. That is how Extinction Rebellion went from a multi-ethnic anti-capitalist revolt to a white carbon tax lobby because of the threat of tear gas, but also because the destruction of the state was the tear gas converted their political platform. Think about when I see Crossix ID turn the IN from radical movement into Extinction Rebellion 2.0. Remember that calls to realism should be treated as a firehouse. It desperately claims the revolutionary struggle we've impact turn the political imaginary of the money see that they are having. It says that fantastical that this is that there's a violent sentimentality to the idea that if only we have power and our demands were listened to, the system of power itself would be ethical and good, which is why they want to reincorporate the farmers of color into the good life of the American dream and give them equal access to the markets. Thayer says this is a fantastical place and a solution to compromises within it, the very cause of the problem, which is what keeps us attached to empire, like Harris flipping back and forth on banning fracking and then bragging about expanding it. That proves their hope for demands is cruel optimism. Links here is the app because it proves an inclination towards reformism makes change less likely. Think about 2020 when abolitionist movements got massive changes in policing going, so reformists swooped in and turned that into bigger police budgets. The link is absolutely unique because they have said that the plan is a kind of abolition because we abolish a market. The idea that we abolish a market is exactly how these movements were co-opted. This is that which demonstrates that they sacrifice revolutionary imaginaries and world making by branching down the ambition of movements. Every NGO is run by somebody who used to believe in the revolution and now they just want funding like the app. The impact is slow death. Reformism is a cruel optimism that makes us willing to die slowly. For example, Martin Forsyth, Gina Khan, activist under life struggle against the landfill in Durban, cancer 2007, got promised to clean the close the dump in 1987 continues today. The tops and the landfill bridges are clean. Electricity plant circles and routing of fundamental teaching government how to keep some forms of deputy civil government or fascist disposal generalized war environmental activism is thus co-opted and managed. This turns their argument about the second link that they state lies because it proves that the state lies in order to circumvent the passage of the affirmative, which takes out the internal link between deliberation of the money and environmental activism that they want us to have. Now I will also answer their re-highlighting of the IEN evidence here because I think this is the link on which it's relevant. That I'm going to read our re-highlighting of the card that proves how they capture activism because this card says that there are so many things that the IEN is demanding where they selectively pick one and use it as a kind of blackmail to say, well, at least we aren't killing you via agricultural subsidies. IEN 22 grants and loans as environmental justice investment until taxes gain the support of the labor movement by haphazardly attaching oil that limits the array exacerbates climate crisis by managing carbon capture and storage is given increased funding to secure the support of labor unions. There is language on which is under new equipment USA would prioritize proposal to utilize diet and feed management to reduce method USAID space supports higher grain diets, corn and food diet changes are pursued big excess profit increases amount crop indigenous people small farming communities encounter abuses as land is targeted for agriculture. All of that is all caused to the money see that zeros their solvency for any of their internal links because the IEN is saying that the IRA itself is bad, but it produces a million reasons why that it has a million other reasons why corn production would be upped, which takes out their internal link to solvency. Now the other answers to the permutation first. It's logically nonsensical. This presumes we're an alternative to carbon tax. We're an alternative to the question of deliberation in this debate, which we think is de-radicalizing and that allows when I see Crossix said the consequences of the act where that deliberation over it is good. So clearly they are mutually exclusive. Second, links are prior. You can't invest into the end of the world. The hedging your bets on this continuation. Third is 90% of performance. Decide proves de-radicalization. Don't let them promise that you can roll the dice on a form one more time after conceding analysis for decades or form that are folded back into this world. The second argument is permutation due the alternative. This is definitionally severance, and Crossix says that we do not eliminate subsidies because we think a world that might not have them. The correct evidence this great climb them on this in Crossix. These are radical. They say that reformism is what co-opts queer theory, which is descriptive of the link terms and the permutation. So to decide that, but not to us. They say we get reformism link only if we be case wrong, or if we will it be in the one and or they say rejection of reformism is bad. This proves the gold tooth evidence proves the link, but because we've taken out the argument that reformism could be good, they say the U.S. is expanding biofuels now. I don't understand why this argument is unique for them because they cannot resolve those things given the arguments in the IEN evidence above and also there will be in the one or they say every past reform did not derail movements. No, this is important. We have given examples of reform that has been of reform that has co-opted and killed movements. That was the example of Extinction Rebellion, but the alternative will be in the 1R, because our argument is not that reforms when passed derail movements, but for example, in the context of the 2020 example that I gave above, that reforms are a way of de-radicalizing movements when those movements are turned back towards reformism, which is exactly what the Money disciplines us into doing via the claims in the bottom contention of the Money that I spent 3 minutes of cross-ex on. And if you did not buy the link in the 2AC, then you should certainly buy the link in the 1R, because they are in the 1AC. You should certainly buy the link in the 2AC, because they've read a fuck ton of cards that are like reformism is the only way. Now the last argument. We'll do the second link here. This is a link to redistribution. You should not redistribute value or access to the market. You should abolish its form fundamentally. Every money is money, but we only need it because they preserve the balance of society and force individuals into a position of survival. This answers the arguments about indigenous demands, because the card they read was literally said was a negative piece of evidence that was like indigenous groups are fighting for survival. Absolutely did not mention the context of subsidies, and if it did, the IN card turned it. Now there are two implications to this link. One, it turns redistribution, and it zeroes solvency. The act might redistribute the spoils of exploitation back to the exploited, but does not change the fundamental structures of that exploitation, because power is not represented in wealth or who gets subsidies, but in ownership. In ownership of the means of production might be a more ethical form of environmentalism, but fundamentally the 1AC is just a celebration of expanding access to the American dream, which is bad. For example, the 1AC can think the end of biofuels, but never the end of growth. They want to shift to EVs and better fuel economy standards. In the meantime, 1AC assessor 22 says rather than biofuels, a much better way to address emissions is through raising gas and vehicle fuel economy while electric cars continue to advance. Look, they frame this is a necessary but unfortunate trade-off, which proves our arguments about sacrifice of populations globally. When you see Barrett, 23 trade-offs arise in the world continues to transition to other energy sources. How their environmental costs, mining minerals and metals required to build more power batteries. That is how they discipline us into a violent intimacy that produces devastation of some populations for the sustenance of others. Now go to case. They cannot win they cannot win case when we are winning all causes. Canada, France, and Brazil are causes zero. The average is 22 biofuel mandates. In Brazil, the treaty food crisis due some suggested waiving mandates, but Canada and France rejected militants of CO2. They also cause increased cane ethylene. There's I'll read the money part. Ethanol plants operate outside the US, Canada, Belgium, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Sweden, and other approaches based on power from biomass. The UK's biggest power plant, Blacktracks, converted for 16 suburban wood pellets instead of coal generate 6% of the UK's electricity. Burn more wood than the UK process every year. The shipping 5 million tons of Canadian across the Atlantic generates
What card is that? The mini card?
Yeah. You're not getting it. Sorry.
No, I didn't know which one it was.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my bad. Alright, I'm good for results.
Okay. Alkin here. Okay. Can you give me any example of an environmental reform that sapped energy for revolutionary movements?
Yeah, that was our example of Extinction Rebellion in their turn to attempt to get reforms pushed through by the government. There was also
reforms.
Carbon taxes probably in that
Wait,
specific instance. The second
They passed a
example.
carbon tax?
No, and that's the point, right?
Okay,
like
so
when we
your argument is that
turn-
reforms that don't materialize don't help movements.
Our argument is that reformism condemns us to slow death.
Okay.
Makes us willing to die for the
I understand the
continuation of
theory.
this
Give
world.
me one example when.
That is the example of, well,
No, wait,
first of
hold
all,
on. Hold on. Give me an example where a movement made a demand, the government then acquiesced to that demand, and then that movement stopped. In the context of the environment.
That was the card that I read on the critique. That was the example of Sajida Khan. She was a climate activist who rallied for the demand of a power plant. The government did promise to close the dump, and they converted it into a new source of clean electricity. She died of cancer from the pollution of that quote-unquote clean electricity, which is our argument about how you
I understand that example.
Okay,
But like,
yeah, because that's carded and everything.
but your link is like it demobilizes other movements.
It's not. It's so
Give me an example of that.
it demobil. Well, that would. I don't think you understand the link because it is not that that reformism in the abstract demobilizes all movements. That would be a ridiculous argument to make. Instead, the argument is about this example. Is that when Sajida Khan turned towards reformism, she was willing to die a slow death. And when those reforms were granted, it was too little, too late, and never really what they wanted in the first place. And she died of pollution from the result of that now reformed
new
So,
clean
like,
power plant.
would it have been better if the government actually got rid of the power
It
plant?
would have been better in a world that did not that if it like reform is bad. Yes, it would have been better if she had struggled for an end of a world that could have.
Well, if she struggled for that, then how would she have not died from the same power plant?
That would be the one and only.
Can you explain now? Because that makes no sense to me.
We should not be willing to die for the continuation of this world. We should be
So we
willing
should-
to
we should
die
die for
for its
something
end.
else?
We should be willing to die for the end of the world.
Okay, so how do you solve slow death? It seems like it's inevitable whether you advocate for.
So I'm
reform
sorry.
or-
So now we've moved to the app causes slow death,
I'm asking-
but it's not really that.
I'm asking how
bad.
the alt solves the links. It seems pretty reasonable.
The alt solves links because it refuses to sacrifice the intimacies that we have with each other. Those
Well, okay, how does the alt
intimacies
solve the
make us-
impacts then? Because how does the alt solve slow death?
Because it struggles against the end of a world that systematically produces it. I'm confused because we read
But
two
have you read-
pieces of evidence. The first is that those intimacies with each other exist now. Those abolitionist intimacies, per the one in Zangan alternative, and the plan replaces those intimacies with a set of liberal ones, a set of reformist ones. We think that's bad.
Alright, Carter said, I should probably make sure I said this right. Alright, Al Carter said, it's just the order is the framework debate, and it's the alt debate. Oh, wait, let me turn my audio on. I keep forgetting. I'm sorry about that, Al.
I was just saying, sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Well, shit.
It's like this one's not on there.
Well, keep
I would
it
take
on.
your computer off. okay?
Yeah,
like,
just
save
no. That's
Oh,
stressful.
Oh, I face you instead.
No. Oh, just make it a little bit longer. There. Okay.
It didn't even need it. It didn't even need the extra. Like, look at that. All for nothing. Alright, anyway. We all good?
Yeah. The monster costume is absurd, actually.
Interpretation evaluates the money sees an epistemic and performative artifact that means we can link to what deliberation over the F does to us as people, scholars, and activists. First, there's a durable fiat DA, and two, is he retreat to durable fiat on case, prove that durable fiat DA to their models that impact is parasitism. They'll always claim to have the secret sauce that movements haven't thought of, but they can't plan for real barriers, implementation, lobbying, repeal, rollback, course strain, obfuscation, and delay that short circuits all their movements, climate education arguments, and performs a link to our true optimism argument. Also, zero links, internal links to skills and clash. Their model artificially bracket that's the most relevant real world barriers to repealing something, so they have no offense that's able to outweigh or dissent. Their interpretation is a dub line, as the model doesn't allow us to weigh epistemically in any meaningful way, which means there's a process of infinite deferral where infinite risk in the real world means we never get to talk about the justifications and indices we use to get to a process which forecloses the entire ability for us to speak about these forms of violence, or the only impact they can go for is a credible literacy arguments, because we're winning the questions of the intimacies we invest in our radical political projects are a prior question. Fairness knows there's a durable fiat DA that turns this, it's not intrinsically good, insofar that it only justifies their model, which they haven't. One is good, two, it's a sliding scale, which means you should be willing to small loss for better clash, prove the clash paradox, and the fact that they want you to do things like get our educational RFT, the fact that they want you to focus, these are all reasons they want you to be able to provide education around, not reasons they want you to be fair, because if that's all they wanted, they'd just flip going. And no, we rely on fairness to arguments, we're at a level of content, they're trying to equate it to a level of form, they're distinct. And there's violent intimacies DA to their model. Environmental costs is the debate is massive, laptops, travel, funding, etc. In other words, our presence here is made possible through an ongoing war on the vote majority, which is RC's claim about violent intimacies. Our responsibility here should be to match those stakes. Unless we adopt an uncompromising orientation towards abolition, we are participating in an actively eco-genocidal system. That means we shouldn't make, that means their appeals to fairness are unpersuasive because they are perfecting the game for its own sake and foreclosing reflexivity necessary to understand the urgency of this conversation. And means we get a counterinsurgency DA. Their model organizes us to view the world from the perspective of governance as a psychosocial operation that replaces those radical insurgent possibilities with the counterinsurgency of reformist liberalism. Done 123. Popular resistance will make political rules in response necessary. People are organized to view the world from the perspective of governance, universities, constructed psychosocial apparatus, implicate people in its epistemology and objectives, counterinsurgency that is celebrated. Climate literacy from the car, 1AC is the link that we're talking about because it's this idea of placing the burden on the individual. If we just started the faucet off when it started to dip, if we just took public transit more, we'd finally be able to stop climate, but that's bullshit because it leaves the systems intact that sort of liberalize us and bring us back into the system. Even if they win most of the claims on their mobilization arguments, we're winning a prior question of intimacy that seeds what our political possibilities can be. It means even if they want education good, violent intimacies aren't good. That turns the ability for their education to be valuable. On the consequentialism debate, go Saudi neg. There's no shot they want extinction because the ONC cross-sex asks, what is the consequence of reading the ONC? They said climate advocacy. We're making a really specific claim about how that climate advocacy trains us to wage small wars in everyday spaces so you can reject it. On to the other. The other is not a response to banning subsidies, but due to the violent intimacy of the demand for deliberation over reform in the space. Refusal works like this. They've invited you to participate in a politics where you will be willing to die slowly, waiting for something that will never happen. They've invited you to cause a success. You should refuse that choice. Refusal is a gendered project, a riotous politics that always borders on abolition, that leans into those life-sustaining intimacies, the ones we have with each other, everyday gestures, entangled connections, fugitive kinships that Zengen. It means they can win extinction in a way, but you'll still vote neg because that's inevitable. But they make you willing to die for the continuation of the world when you should be willing to die for its end. That was cross-sex of the 2NC. Refusal teaches us that survival isn't about the number of lives we save, but the revolutionary world that continue after we're gone, like Sylvia starting Trinity House after Marshall B. Johnson's death, model after the Star House to continue on that legacy. They try and say past movements getting co-opted sons. No, that's our argument for why we shouldn't cede our radical intimacies to violent ones, which is the affirmative. And the conceded Maher evidence at the bottom of the YC is a uniqueness claim for why radical ecological movements are forming now and why using reformism to gut that is bad. Quebec 20s and Nick Pard says we as Marxists should reject neoliberal identity politics and tax the system writ large, which says a lot more why a reason why we should invest in radicalism, not sort of ivory tower forms of pessimism over the possibilities of radicalism, turns into pessimism arguments. On the mind shift argument, yeah, we don't feel mind shift, we're a fucking refusal. We talk about what sort of intimacies we invest in this space on emissions. Stein misses the boat because we're winning that even if you're skeptical that they all overcome, you should be willing to die for this world rather than sustain it, or to end this world rather than sustain it. On consumption, only warrant on such kind is that Jesus asked people to be poor. The alt isn't be poor, it's be radical. Every example I gave proves that there's a revolutionary history that we must align with because the alternative is the reproduction of a violent world. On Wolf, no, we reject all. Y'all said we should train ourselves to be reformists. We said we should be fucking radical instead. And on Lucas didn't read the Ballard KL market predictions are not responsive because our intimacy argument wins that it supersedes how markets operate. The revolution is happening all around us. The app just doesn't know where to look. This is Mofford. Decolonial intimacies are rising around the world with green uncertainties. This is Campbell blockade, Gretchen Zeros, peasant revolts in rural India, resisting red mining, dam busting in Nicaragua, the anti-nuclear movement in Sudan, blockading across North America, even in the Imperial Courts. The book, How to Build a Pipeline, was read widely, and degross is the word of the year. Every example coheres around a shared refusal to reform, a refusal to believe that the world as it is, not, and instead only invest in a world that can be. The act is an affective counter-revolution that reincorporates thoughts and de-radicalizes them. Only these anti-reformist movements can solve their impacts because it's a try or die argument for the negative. Their crackdown arguments, no flows negative, concede the state will use extra legal means to cling on to power, which proves zero policy failure, and means it's try or die for the alt. Crackdown should radicalize you, but they only let it reconfirm the legitimacy of the infrastructure of power that caused the system in the first place. It's defense at best. It's a tear gas that gets rolled into the undercurrent when we try to radical shit.
2 minutes. So no. What? Okay. I appreciate it, sir. You didn't do the second one, probably.
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm good.
Okay, we stopped at 5:30. And then the chat. Okay, it's sent. Or the prep is sent in the chat. There's not a doc for the speech.
That's weird.
Ooh, that was close. The order is case and then the K. I don't know how many separate sheets of the K you have, but the K word will be like framework, linked stuff, the alternative. And then like the ontology, abolition, bad stuff will also be on the list today. Al, are you good? Awesome. I'm actually gonna. Okay, if you want to talk, you can talk. But if you're good, we're good. Okay. Iowa, you both good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Vote after E-corn instead of burning. The impacts are all dropped. 1. Hunger, artificially profiting ethanol for crowds out popular production for edible products, increasing global food prices. We can solve 23 million instances of food hunger. That's the etymological evidence. 2. Water. Ethanol is extremely irrigation penetrating off with access to drinking water for millions across the Midwest, including everyone in this debate round. 3. Air quality. Ethanol refineries pollute substantial particle matter resisted by the evidence. They've conceded our impacts are linear, so every degree of solvency matters. It means that if there's a high chance of solvency, you should artificially inflate our offense on the framework debate. Now, they make 2 arguments in the block, neither of them are responsive. They're both alternative positive arguments. Now, we have only read impacts about the United States and our ability to export food and the profitability of agriculture in the United States, which means their arguments about other countries are not responsive at all. Every impact to the app, every link to the app is about the United States. Okay.
And there's no mandate, so you wouldn't.
Oh yeah, there's no mandate, so the United States will not be able to import because it's not profitable or any mandate. Okay. So AC1 is framework links us have a causal connection to when I see anything else turns descriptive statements into offense and lowers the bar for a negative win condition. Condition 1. Fairness. What? Okay. We'll go to climate literacy. Here, climate literacy outweighs. It turns the debate into a community of well-informed internal advocates with a deep understanding of concern about climate change. You can filter through a scientific research that promotes intrinsically valuable skills like critical thinking and problem solving, which are key to the next politics. They have dropped that we've done multiple studies over this, and it is statistically true. Impact Calc always goes aft. Climate literacy informs our personal habits and orients our politics to effective decarbonization, which actually reduces emissions, even if it's a small effect. Every ounce of mitigation can save a life. We've read evidence on this, and then we've read evidence on this, and they have not. Now, their defense is bad. The first argument is that it places the burden on the individual. This is incorrect. We have identified that government mandates are the problem in the status quo, but individuals helping to solve climate change, it can only help the situation. They said they're winning the prior question about intimacies. That will be answered above. Now, their counter-interpretation is charitable for debate. The plan is infinitely arbitrary and will always shift the goalposts between each rejected. But the plan and our impacts are the end point of our epistemology, which means that we should access them and we meet under their model. The durable fiat decide. We do not do this. Any other debate checks. We have to win that the plan is popular, that it can be implemented, and is not overly optimistic, which means that we do not rely on this idealistic form of fiat. Just because you did not say plan unpopular in the House in this debate does not mean that we do not have to do research over things like that and, under our model of debate for other debates. To link harder to this, however, the alternative is a pipe dream and sending people to the gulags for a failed revolution is definitionally serial policy failure, and it ends up actually killing people, which our model does not do. Now, they said the interrupt is a double line. This is incorrect. We have not said extinction. We have said we should talk about the merits of the things about the app versus a solid alternative with link uniqueness, which is below. Do you want me to extend fairness or no? Okay. The fairness answers are not responsive, but I'll answer the decides. The violent intimacy is that abolitionism is bad for the alt debate. So many impacts on it, but the app is with the app, and debating over the app is good. The counterinsurgency decide is incorrect. And this is not unique to their offense because it says everyone is already doing this in the status quo, but it does not make an offensive argument. People want to organize in the government because that's the only way that anything can actually spill up. The consequences debate, we should evaluate the models based on consequences, otherwise it evolves into a world where we end up actually killing people. This is functionally drawn, and they've only answered it with the climate literacy stuff, which does not matter now. Permutation do both. They only answers that links are non-responsive. Perm do both. Do reform and instrument orient toward revolution. Reform reduces suffering, increases momentum, and rejection is paternalistic. Professionalism link is disproven by indigenous political activism. They drop that it is effective, results in emissions dropping by 25%, and saves native land from destruction to pipelines. Unchecked environmental destruction, like ethanol expansion, separates natives from their land, causing spiritual violence. Natives have asked non-natives to the plan, and they said that the role for non-natives should be to implement policy solutions and prevent extraction from their lands. Policy is one aspect of a broader resistance, including campaigns, protests, and boycotting that do legitimate work. This is a net link turn. When movements take demands, they see positive results. They are energized to continue their broader revolutionary strategies, but the revolution cannot all happen at once. They have said that one example of power plant does not get abolished. That does not disprove our scenarios because the government found a way to circumvent it, but it explains how their plan is circumvented, and it proves that reform is good. If the power plant did get abolished, lives would have been saved, but even if the movement fails, they've dropped the instill spiritual hope and deepen the relationship the natives have with their land. That's the full truth evidence. Their reality is anything of a mission. Just because we do not do every demand the native has does not mean that the plan is not valuable. Topicality still exists, and we should have to be pertinent to it. I should have answered our impacts there. Redistribution linkage to the plan does not abolish all markets. Our answers apply above. The plan is cellular to revolution. The plan does not abolish markets. It also cannot solve. The plan does not claim to solve for warming. Even every environmental would still demand climate action. The assholes fascism by impacting their interrogating strategies about lying about corn ethanol. The alt revolution turns their impacts. One, cases of dissad. Impossible to revolt if you're hungry. This is conceded. It means the revolution or revolutionary strategies can never be successful. Two, crackdowns turn fascism and turn all of their serial policy failure arguments. Even if it happens with reform, our wolf evidence is comparison, and it says that it would be more violent than the revolution. The military would cling to power, roll out tanks and ethnic scenes, and crush the alt, causing more slow death. Autocratic dictatorships would seize the power, vacuum licensing mass mandates. Three, the slow death. Preventable starvation happens and is occurring in the status quo because of corn ethanol subsidies. You also make those people die as they wait for a revolution that will never happen. Four, it's worse for the environment. Even if growth ceased overnight, existing fossil fuel plants would emit extreme amounts of GHGs in the decades to follow. Best case, we are just hunters and gatherers bringing anything we can in our hands, which is worse for the climate. That's the ground evidence. Now back to the permutation debate. They made a couple of arguments, all of them are incorrect. The only legitimate one is the links or our prior question, but the alternative is not against the app. The logical, sensible stuff. If we win, if the app strengthens indigenous movements, then we should get a permutation. The reformism decide was answered above, which means it was not conceded. Not severance. Like the answer, the stuff about the IBM, cash capitalism.
Durable fiat debate equally links to the alternative.
Yeah, already said that. Durable fiat equally links to the alternative. They send people to their own deaths, which the app cannot do. So if anything, we don't kill people.
Cool. We had 4.
It's 420.
Alright, start.
Alright. Hey.
That's hilarious. That's funny as fuck.
Alright, the order is the case.
Where's what?
The case right
Oh,
now.
it's a case just
Nah,
what?
that would be an interesting choice for sure.
You specify like framework. Oh, is that?
Overview, framework. Oh, my timer is actually like clicked on my computer. I'm sitting here looking for it. Okay.
We have won the theory of violent entities that proves deliberation over the one you see is the tear gas that makes us hostile to truly abolitionist politics. That impact terms the ballot that they want you to write when it sanctions the imagination of triumphantly wrestling power from elites to take governance for themselves, but they cannot win, and that is good when they have dropped the top constituency that proves this power to govern is imposed through terror as usual. We're going for that impact. It means that you treat the app as one of a multitude of small wars in everyday spaces, which is the internal link to the violence that they have, that all of their cards are discussing in outweighs in terms of every impact about how the money sees the demands of indigenous groups, because it proves that that demand itself is the kind of blackmail that says, well, we'll throw you some breadcrumbs in order to see an oral that it will kill us all slowly. That proves that the sentimentality of the demand for recognition and repayment disciplines us into an intimacy with liberalism that produces counterinsurgency, sustains the unsustainable investment in the status quo, produces the slow death that is constitutive of this world and feeds us on our most intimate issues, which is that things were otherwise turning issue, is that they've conceded the alternative solves the affirmative. It is a refusal that is always a generative, that is always a generative project. It is not a fiated like the alternative would like you to believe. Instead, those bottom of the letter are every example proves revolutionary ecological movements are gaining power in the status quo. We are winning the thesis claim about violent entities that prove what we invest in shapes how those things pan out, whether it is the violent entities or reform that they or these movements participate in, or the radical intimacies of the strength every day. This is a framing question, because if it means if we win a link, then it is try or die for a form of radical intimacies, but you don't have to believe that it solves more broadly. When we are winning, that it is preferable to debate about to refuse debate over the money seek framework debate power. The footprints this ad should frame this flow as flagged in the one and R, and I did not hear a response. The conversations we have around seem low stakes, they are haunted by the environmental cost of what it took for us all to get here. This is our thesis about intimate economies of violence and the violent entities of the debate space, because the environmental footprint of this debate is massive and is a waste of time to debate over anything other than abolition. This impact terms the implication of what our model would do for debate. Making it impossible to defend policy gaps is good. It makes appeals to their kind of clash very unpersuasive, because content should be your foremost concern, and perfecting the game for its own sake forecloses the reflexivity necessary to set the real stakes of our conversation, which means that if they win a link to like climate literacy that causes us to think critically about how we can all do reform, then you should be willing to let debate die over that. Your sole concern in choosing a framework should be whether it's conducive to oriented debate towards uncompromising demand for abolition. I will extend our interpretation here. You should value the one I see as epistemic and performative artifact. Only that can solve their impacts. They say the climate that disproves the idea that links must be causal, because they first word out of their mouth and when you see crosses for the consequences of the plan is learning about reformism, which means that is sufficient for a link. They say climate literacy outweighs no. We impact term the direction of this climate literacy. There are some kinds of climate literacy that can orient us towards a reform, and some kinds of reform, and some kinds of climate abolitionist climate literacy that refuse compromise with like this obsession with like personal habits, individualism, etc. This was our argument about every person using public transport. That was a quote that Gray pulled from their evidence. It's the links to decay because it's how their education is weaponized. Placate revolutionary desires, make a collective problem one of individuation. If every bit of education helps shape us, and that education to be revolutionary. Counter-interpretation is not arbitrary. No metric way to weigh material impacts for this epistemic. Once you either only value climate literacy versus decay or link. Extra hard to discuss because the deferral argument. They say the app's impacts justify its model. That is not true. Their impacts cannot retroactively justify the desirability of the model that produces them, which takes out the we meet durable fiat. It does not link to the old as well, because we have made an argument about how movement exists in the status quo and the affirmative that orients them otherwise into reformism, which is bad. The alt debate will be on the alt debate. The K problem.
I'm going for the professionalization link. The two-year will say that 1% risk of implementation means it's worth the fight. That cannot be true. And we have one link argument that impact turns that logic. And mutually exclusive it solves our impact scenarios. Not only are we turning imagination of the implementation of the app, we have a risk that the app itself would be bad. That is our arguments about that is our arguments about shift to electric vehicles that happen after the plan, because those things are secured through REM mining that sacrifices some lives to preserve others. This links to the argument that they made on case that like this would impact everybody in this debate, which is a form of blackmail that tells you that you will die of like starvation and exhaustion if you do not vote affirmative. This is the violent entities of the one see that sort of entice you into into preserving your life at the cost of others. The affirmative, the demands of the Thayer evidence proper demands for reform are a cool optimism insofar as they maintain our attachment to the system that prevent our flourishing. Conceded examples. One is the example of Zahoni Masashi, who struggles his whole life only for his legacy. Things like the IRA, the Theoro 99 evidence is lethal and settler colonialism. You should not be satisfied with this. The 2NC example of Extinction Rebellion also takes it out. Our analysis is just too good and too specific for you to buy, but the plan gets passed, so it's different. It's not responsive. The Carter 2NC example, Sajida Khan proved the reform she struggled for was passed. The state made a promise and it did so to reform more radical change. The best link is the Extinction Rebellion evidence is ratcheted. The Extinction Rebellion was ratcheted down from militant opposition to white carbon tax lobby. The best link is to the IE evidence. To the IEN evidence, you should not let them be next because they have conceded that the link turned the fuck out of case because the things that they treat us to be satisfied with are absolutely not the sort of like are absolutely not like the status quo or whatever or a link of omission, but instead they said that they treat us to be okay with things like the diet changes that came along with the IRA that still produced subsidies for corn that hurt indigenous people and small farmers, which straight turns their claims to their sort of blackmail claims that will be the entire 2 hour about how settlers should have an obligation to do things. The revolution turns are all wrong. I extended the alternative above crackdown should radicalize you, but they never let it. The fact that the military is the largest in the world all just disproves the permutation. The link, they must wade through 100% of links and zero it before they win the permutation. That's all.
5:30.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, you're not seeing that. So were you?
I was.
Okay.
Okay. It'll be the case, framework, with McKay, with Winston, all. Okay. We good? Yep. I see your thumbs up. Okay. The 2 hours should have gone to the case. This cave reform only makes sense if they beat in the case. Ruining the plan is a unique demand that saves billions of lives, deepens the connection the natives have with their land, and catalyzes a broader revolutionary struggle. If we win reform, it's better than revolution. We don't even need to win framework because we have validated the 1AC as an epistemic artifact and disproved the alt, which is they think was on Tondo, so is an at-win condition. They have not said the plan. We have not said the plan solves all problems ever. Just that we can be satisfied. Just that the plan is necessary, not sufficient, and does solve some impacts of hunger that they have totally dropped. The plan can solve the K impacts. The alt has no way to solve the case impacts that are ongoing and dropped in every speech. One is starvation. We are ramming corn ethanol into our SUVs and our planes instead of feeding people. A war in Ukraine causes global grain shortages, but the plan can fill in that gap and solve those with literally a stroke of a pen by deleting ethanol from the market. The plan isn't, quote, breadcrumbs that Tunar describes, but thousands of tons of corn that mean the difference between starvation and living for millions of people. The hunger outweighs and causes slow death, which is their impacts, and meaning makes fighting for revolution impossible, which is an argument for why only implementation can solve their offense. Second, water and air quality also drop. The plan gives millions access to drinking water. It improves air quality, which saves lives and is a value improvement over the status quo, a necessary condition to engage in revolutionary struggle. The alt orients towards long-term revolution, which has no way to resolve ongoing violence that occurs as a result of burning our food. Now, framework. We should compare strategies to determine if the plan or the alternative is better. There's no winning condition in the 2NR. They don't even explain their or have any judge instruction for how you should evaluate the debate, which means you should not auto-exclude the ask and other compare strategies. The impact is climate literacy. The impact is job. If we can meaningfully engage strategies, evaluate whether things are good or bad, and come to conclusions that increases critical thinking skills, it increases or breaks down dogma, and allows us to orient our politics towards actual good proposals, which is the power of evidence, and citing studies about debate. It says that this actually changes our daily lifestyle habits. It means that after debating about what we see and clashing over it, we can change our habits, like not buying corn ethanol. The impact might be small, but it does spill out to some degree because we've read studies on this, and our impact's linear. So every less corn ethanol produced could save a life. So our impact has to outweigh. We solve their haunted by environmental cost impacts, but we can compare the plan versus the resolution. So they get all their links under our model, but we just get to weigh the impact turn of our revolution is worse. It's not a waste of time. The winning this because it allows us to compare strategies to solve violence. The neg only win this argument if they win that revolution is good. Otherwise, it's not a waste of time to talk about reform, because if we get our impact turn, that's an app win condition, even under their model. So framework really is not that relevant. They say climate literacy. It's not just about questioning. It's not about unquestionably endorsing reforms, rather than some reforms are good and some are bad. The whole point is to quickly think about it and debate about which ones are good or bad, which they have not done because they have not even gone to the case in the 2NR, which means that if they're right that all reforms are bad, we come to learn about that through our model, because we learn that reform is not a valuable way to solve the environment, but their model evacuates that because it doesn't allow us to weigh the app, or it does, which means that we agree and we get to do our things. The individualization side is backwards. Research in the app led us to the conclusion that the government is at fault. They're the ones propagating subsidies and making corn ethanol artificially profitable. Just because we have said that our model might lead debaters to stop buying more corn ethanol does not say it's the fault of the individual. The reason why there's a problem. The durable fiat decided there's no impact to this, just equally linked to the alt, because they have durably fiat that the movement succeeds, and we should orient to it. Now, I'm doing the alt debate first because they have totally dropped the impact turn. That means they can't solve any of their links, which means even if they win a link to the plan, if alt is equally bad or worse, then you cannot possibly go negative. It's not try or die. If it's bad, it creates a permanent state of terror as usual, because the 2NR drops the impact turn. The first is crackdowns. It turns fascism because an autocratic dictator would seize power. The military would cling to power and crush the alt. They would roll out tanks and planes and kill everyone in the movement trying to take it down. They did not compare this to reforms, which are incremental and would not threaten the state in that capacity, which means they are way worse for fascism and cause more slow death. Second, the alt is worse for the environment. Even if it goes cease overnight, they dropped it at existing fossil fuel plants would emit extreme amounts of GHGs for decades, and it causes us to become hunters and gatherers, which means we burn oil, coal, and everything we can get our hands on, which is net worse for the environment. So they have no way to solve the environment. It's actually worse under their model, which means that revolution cannot be an effective strategy. They were good on revolutions happening now, but the 2NR is very bad on revolutions that actually save the environment. Also, cases that decide you can't possibly engage in revolution if you're hungry, which means only the permutation solves. Now, the link, reform is not pro-optimism, it's rather spiritual hope. The 2NR didn't say we should endorse both revolution and incremental reform. And to get there, reform catalyzes a broader resistance. Goldtooth is a native and says that when they see movements succeed, that mobilizes further resistance and encourages broader circle, which means that we don't just give up and think that we're satisfied, rather we do more. Targeted state demands are just one part of a broader coalition of resistance, including boycotting, that actually resulted in pipelines being stopped. Our evidence calculates this and says that 25% of all emissions from US and Canada were reduced because of demands that natives made in the state, and that the role of non-natives should be implementing the demands that they have demanded for, i.e. the plan. They specifically rejected biofuel subsidies and said we should reject them, which means that you should advocate for the plan as a desirable starting point, not an end point. Even if demands fail, it's still valuable to advocate for them because they drop. It creates a spiritual attachment to the world, or to Mother Earth, which is good for natives. It's also, they link way worse to state of terror because they're in action. They have no way to solve the harms of the status quo. Now, the IEN is a link of omission, cannot possibly be offense for them. We're not saying you should be satisfied, rather that the plan is a necessary demand, or the demand that you should endorse because it's necessary for broader movements. Otherwise, people would be hungry. It's necessarily efficient because you dropped the case, which proves that our impacts are massive. At worst, there's a link of omission that says we didn't do everything, which means that the inclusion of the plan with the alternative is good enough. They have no example of any environmental reform ever meaning movement doesn't succeed, which means you can do both at once. Their one example is that power plant didn't get abolished, which proves that reform is good because the power plant did get abolished. It saves lives. They have not applied to solution to the case at all, which means that you should assume that the plan is sufficient to solve our impacts, and they can't solve theirs because it all fails against the king.
But
Anyway,